I always look after Her Highness, Barkas said, his voice a masterpiece of impeccable, clinical politeness. There wasn't a trace of rudeness in his tone, yet Gareth found himself wanting to strike him regardless. I merely wish to inform you that the princess is resting peacefully. Please do not mistake my report for insolence. Gareth leveled a scorching glare at Barkas, but he didn't waste his breath on a rebuttal. He turned and strode into the grand hall. There was no point in arguing with a man who was as unyielding as a mountain. You only ended up humiliating yourself. He clicked his tongue in irritation as he crossed the room. The hall's decor was breathtaking, scarcely inferior to the ballrooms of the highest nobility in the capital. We are honored by your presence, Your Highness. As Gareth approached the long table, draped in a cloth of dazzling white linen, the abbot rose and offered a deep bow. Please, take your seat. Gareth sat and cast a critical eye over the table. It seemed Vasilis had no intention of adhering to the ascetic principles of monastic life. The table groaned under the weight of exquisite delicacies seasoned with the rarest of spices, served on silver platters and in heavy gold chalices. Gareth nodded to the dozen clergymen gathered around the table, a look of smug satisfaction crossing his face. My thanks for this warm welcome. Please, be seated. The monks had barely reclaimed their chairs when Barkas moved to stand behind Gareth. He remained as silent and motionless as a tombstone. Gareth noticed the curious, lingering glances the monks cast toward the commander. Barkas's presence always commanded more attention than was necessary. It was a fact Gareth had long since come to loathe. Irritation flared in his chest. Why were these holy men staring at his knight instead of their future emperor? He suppressed the feeling with effort and raised his goblet. Allow me to express my gratitude to the abbot for such an exceptional reception, he began. Every eye in the room returned to him. Gareth paused, savoring the weight of their attention. I hope this evening proves to be memorable for us all. He was about to deliver a graceful conclusion when a flash of gold burst into his periphery. Gareth froze, his heart skipping a beat as he stared in shock at the entrance of the hall. For a fleeting, terrifying moment, he thought he was looking at Senevier. He gripped his goblet so hard his knuckles turned white. His gaze raked over his half-sister. Talia Roem Gwirta had clearly never been taught the concept of modesty, a requirement in any house of God. Her outfit was as flashy as anything worn at a palace gala. And, to Gareth's eyes, just as vulgar. He ground his teeth as he watched her approach the table. Her gown was thin, almost translucent in the candlelight, tracing every curve of her body with an aggressive precision. The monks' faces turned the color of bleached bone. A few actually gasped, their mouths hanging open in a display of unholy shock. Gareth lunged to his feet, his rage boiling over. How dare you? Do you even realize where you are? To appear in such a state. He slammed his goblet onto the table, sending a spray of dark wine across the pristine white cloth. He ignored the liquid soaking his fingers as he pointed a trembling hand at her. Did you not receive my order? I forbade you from showing your face. Oh, I received your message, Talia said, her lips curving into a smile that was both charming and lethal. She pulled out a chair directly beside Gareth and sat down with a calculated ease. But how could I possibly stay away when my beloved brother was so clearly desperate to see me? What nonsense are you spewing now? Does my brother truly not know my heart? Her eyes, the color of cold, deep-sea cobalt, narrowed with a sharp, mocking intelligence. You sent the commander himself to deliver your words. Does that not signal a passionate desire for my company? As your devoted sister, I simply had to live up to your expectations. I even dressed especially for you. She ran a slow, deliberate hand over the shimmering fabric of her dress. Gareth had to summon every ounce of his willpower to keep from striking her across the mouth. I hope you are as delighted to see me as I am to see you, brother, she purred. I was, until you contaminated the room, Gareth hissed through his teeth. Talia laughed, her eyes dancing with a malicious light. Gareth's shoulders shook with a savage, uncontrolled fury. Every time she laughed like that, he felt a primal urge to shatter that beautiful, arrogant face. "How much longer do you intend to play this game?" His voice was a low, jagged blade. "Are you testing the limits of my endurance, Talia? Why such hurtful words?" She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. The chandelier's light caught her sharp shoulder blades and the fragile line of her collarbone. Her body, as exquisitely carved as an ivory statuette, held the monks in a hypnotic, shameful trance. Serpent spawn. Gareth felt a wave of nausea. "I merely accepted the invitation," Talia said, her gaze drifting toward the abbot as if seeking an ally. The Silas sat paralyzed, his expression one of pure, bewildered terror. Talia's eyes narrowed into a sly, feline grin. The display of brazen, street-wench behavior was more than Gareth could stomach. He reached out and seized her wrist in a crushing grip. "If you wish to play the harlot, find a partner among the camp followers. Do not even think of casting your filth upon these holy men. If you tarnish the Imperial name with your wretched schemes, I will personally ensure that pretty face of yours is never seen in public again." Talia's pupils constricted into pinpricks. "And what, exactly, would you do to me?" she hissed, leaning into his space as if inviting the blow. "When my brother speaks with such conviction, I find myself dying to see if he can fulfill his promise." Gareth's patience snapped. He reached for her throat, but a heavy, unyielding hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Your Highness." Gareth flinched and looked up. Barkas was staring down at him with his usual, vacant gaze. His face was a mask of cold indifference, but in that moment, it felt to Gareth as though the tip of a sword were pressing against his skin. "The assembly is waiting for the conclusion of your toast," Barkas said. His hand pressed down on Gareth's shoulder, a gentle but absolute command to stand down. Gareth jerked his shoulder away, his fingers twitching with the ghost of a violence he was forced to suppress. He turned a final, murderous look on Talia. She was baiting him, and he was falling for it. He couldn't afford to lose control in front of the clergy. He released her wrist, throwing it back as if he had been touching something diseased. He raised his cup once more. "We have wasted enough time on petty bickering," he said, his voice loud and hollow. "It is time to dine. My thanks again to the abbot for this magnificent feast. I hope this night leaves us all with warm memories." The monks, glancing at one another with terrified eyes, slowly reached for their own goblets. Talia remained as she was, her arms crossed over her chest, watching the scene with a dark, triumphant smirk. As Gareth felt the heat of his rage beginning to simmer again, Barkas leaned toward Talia. "I must ask you to show the respect due to our host, Your Highness." He reached down and gently took her hand, his fingers uncurling hers with a surprising, fluid strength. He placed a silver chalice in her palm. Talia flinched at the unexpected contact, her eyes flashing with a sudden, sharp anger. Gareth expected her to dash the wine into Barkas's face. Since they were children, she had loathed the man with an almost animalistic intensity. But to Gareth's shock, Talia only narrowed her eyes, like a cat deciding whether or not to pounce, and slowly straightened in her chair. Gareth's brow furrowed. Retreating was not in Talia's nature. Why had she folded so easily under Barkas's pressure? It wasn't like her. Not at all. "What are you planning, Talia Roem Gwirta?"